Namaste. Welcome again. My name is Janapati Das. We are going to get into another story of Krishna, the Krishna book reading. Please accept my respects. Let me offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual master, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa Iti Namine. And I offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual grandfather, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have many of these videos on the Krishna book reading, going back, I think probably something like 70 videos or so. You're welcome to watch, and please share with your friends. Encourage people to like and subscribe. And we're going to start off with some hearing and chanting of Krishna's names. So please join along. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa Iti Namine Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhakta-vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhakta-vrinda Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Hari Nityananda 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 Hari Bol Chaitanya 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 Hari Bol Chaitanya 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 Hari Bol Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Okay, Hari Bol, welcome. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are continuing again. Krishna Krishna and Balaram in Mathura, and now Krishna, of course, has gone to see his uncle Akura, and there are these prayers that Akura has been giving to Krishna, and so Krishna being in a relationship of love where it's the rasa, there are these different rasas, right? There's Santa Rasa, which is a neutral relationship, and then there is servitude relationship of a devotee with God, and there is a relationship of friendship, by which, like Uddhava and Krishna, or Arjuna and Krishna have this, Arjuna has this relationship with Krishna in friendship. And there's relationship in parenthood, where we have like Yashoda and Maharaj Nanda are in relationship as a devotee of Krishna as parent. And then, of course, the highest form of relationship, or rasa, of conjugal love, which the gopis are in relationship with Krishna. So Akura is a relationship of servitude to Krishna. So Krishna wanted to engage him in service to him by visiting the Pandavas to report back to Krishna what, to see how his devotees of the Pandava brothers, of course, were, highly, in the story of the Mahabharata, is very much all about the Pandava and Pandava brothers, which we call them the Pandava brothers because King Pandu was the father, and he was the emperor of the world, but he was the father of the Pandavas, which were in order Yudhisthira, Arjuna, Bhima, and Nakula and Sahadev, who were twins. So 5 brothers, right? And they were all born not of King Pandu, but actually of demigods, different demigods. And that's a whole nother story of how that happens. So they're half, they have this demigod fathers, different demigods. And so Krishna deputed Akura to go and see because they were all devotees of Krishna. They're all friends and relatives of Krishna. And this is the whole story that we're going to get into of what was going on and how the Battle of Kurukshetra took place. This is all connected with, of course, in the Mahabharata. And this next chapter is called Ill-Motivated Dhrtarastra. Dhrtarastra, yeah. Dhrtarastra, of course, was the brother of King Pandu. He was a blind king. He was born blind for another reason. It's a wonderful thing about the Mahabharata and Vedic stories. There's always stories and stories and stories. So when you explain one thing, you have to explain another story, and then there's more stories connected to it. But Dhrtarastra basically was the brother, and because King Pandu had died, the Pandava brothers were under the care of Dhrtarastra, their uncle. But he was not only blind, as they say, blind by birth, but blind spiritually too. In other words, he was weak in his affection for his own sons, and he had 100 sons with his Gandhari, his wife. And that's another story of how that happened, how they had 100 sons. But Duryodhana was the primary son of Dhrtarastra, and his heart was black and envious of the Pandavas and their right, to the throne, and felt like he should have the throne and his brothers should be part of the kingdom. And Dhrtarastra, being affectionate towards his son, a lot of times went along with this, and this is why this is called ill-motivated Dhrtarastra, because his motivation was ill and was not good. It was because he should have been giving the kingdom to the Pandavas, and Yudhisthira was a very righteous and apt ruler and all the Pandavas were all very spiritually elevated devotees of Krishna, and Duryodhana was not. So, this kind of goes along with this sort of fact that, Krishna's purpose of coming to the planet was to eliminate the demoniac kshatriyas, or demoniac kings of the world, and to instate very pious and spiritually elevated people into the kingdoms. And that's just why he wanted Yudhisthira to be the king of the emperor of the world, and not Duryodhana. So this is all part of Krishna's plan. Even everything that happens in the Mahabharata, the Battle of Kurukshetra. So we're going to read this. This is actually a very interesting story. Thus, being ordered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, Akrura visited Hastinapura. So the Kuru dynasty was situated in Hastinapura. Hastinapura is said to be the site of what is now New Delhi. The part of New Delhi, which is still known as Dhrtarastra, is accepted by people in general as the old capital of the Pandavas. The very name Hastinapura suggested that there were many hastis, or elephants. Because the Pandavas kept many elephants in the capital, it was called Hastinapura. Keeping elephants is a very expensive job. To keep many elephants, therefore, the kingdom must be very rich, and Hastinapura was full of elephants, horses, chariots, and other opulences. When Akrura reached Hastinapura, he saw that the capital was full of all kinds of opulences. The kings of Hastinapura were taken to be the ruling kings of the whole world. Their fame was widely spread throughout the entire kingdom, and their administration was conducted under the good counsel of learned Brahmanas. After seeing the very opulent capital city, Akrura met King Dhrtarastra. He also saw grandfather Bhishma sitting with him. After meeting them, he went to see Vidura and then Vidura's sister Kunti. So there are a lot of characters in there. So just to basically explain that a little bit. Bhishma was actually the brother, an elder brother of Dhrtarastra, and from another relationship. And there's a backstory to why he's not the king, because he basically claimed brahmachari for his whole life, and he stayed by that vow so that his father could marry the queen of the time. This queen the queen, I find myself getting into the story, right? So the father was in love with this, fell in love with this village girl, this very beautiful girl, and she said, her father said, you may marry her, but the son that is given by this will be the king. And that actually, Bhishma was the first son, so he should have been the king. But Bhishma saw that his father was really in love with this woman and said, I will give you, I will renounce my thing to the throne, and I will also be a brahmachari. So that means I won't get married or have children that will compete with the throne. So basically ensuring that the first son would be actually the king of this dynasty. After meeting with them, he went to see Vidura, and of course Vidura was another brother of Dhrtarastra, and of also Vidura's sister Kunti. One after another, he saw the son of Somadatta and the king of Balika. So Kunti was, of course, married to King Pandu originally. One after another, he saw the son of Somadatta and the king of Balika, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, Karna, and Suyodhana. So it's also, Suyodhana is another name of Duryodhana. So this is the eldest son of Dhrtarastra. So he saw Dronacharya, who was another character in this whole thing, who was also the military teacher, one of the military teachers of the Pandavas. Kripacharya, same thing. They're all like teachers of of the Pandava brothers, and also Duryodhana and the sons of Dhrtarastra. He saw the 5 Pandava brothers and the other friends and relatives living in the city. Akrura was known as the son of Gandhi, so whomever he met was very pleased to receive him. He was offered a good seat at his receptions, and he inquired all about his relatives' welfares and other activities. Since he was deputed by Lord Krishna to visit Hastinapura, it is understood that he was very intelligent in studying a diplomatic situation. Dhrtarastra was unlawfully occupying the throne after the death of the king Pandu, despite the presence of the Pandu's sons. So there was, a situation where actually Dhrtarastra was supposed to be sort of in turn, taking care of the Pandu sons, but was actually occupying the throne and sort of holding on to it and not relinquishing it. Akrura wanted to study the whole situation by remaining there. He could understand very well that ill-motivated Dhrtarastra was very much inclined in favor of his own sons. In fact, Dhrtarastra had already usurped the kingdom and was now instigating and planning to dispose of the 5 Pandava brothers. Akrura knew also that all the sons of Dhrtarastra, headed by Duryodhana, were very crooked politicians. Dhrtarastra did not act in accordance with the good instruction given by Bhishma and Vidura, but he was being conducted by the ill instruction of such persons such as Karna, Shakuni, and others. So there's a lot of other characters in this. Karna, of course, was the first son, the eldest son of Kunti, but it was a son that she had been given a boon to have children by demigods, and she wanted to test it, and so she called on the sun god, and the sun god came, and she was like, whoa, oh my god, this does work. And she was like, I don't really want to do this. And the sun god said, well, once you invoked this, we cannot change it. So they had to mate, and Karna was born, but she was so ashamed being she was at that time not married, so it was not really looked upon to have children. So she actually put the child in the river in a boat and set it off. It's very much like Moses, right? And of course some other Shudra families, chariot riders, picked up the child and raised him on their own. So it was actually this case of that Karna had a higher birth, but was seen as, a Shudra for his whole life. So he actually naturally, but he didn't actually know this until later. At this point, he just was seen as a Shudra, and he was rebuked to study military science from Dronacharya. So he basically took on, he became friends with Duryodhana. Of course, he joined in with this sort of ill bunch. Shakuni, of course, was the uncle of Duryodhana. He plays a key figure in this whole Mahabharata story too. Sort of a bad guy. But these are all these crooked politicians, very, doing things deceitfully. Akrura decided to stay in Hastinapura for a few months to study the whole political situation. So he's going to figure this whole thing out and be able to report it back to Krishna. Gradually, Akrura learned from Kunti and Vidura that Dhrtarastra was very intolerant and envious of the 5 Pandava brothers because of their extraordinary learning in military science and their greatly developed bodily strength. They acted as true chivalrous heroes, exhibited all the good qualities of Kshatriyas, and were very responsible princes, always thinking of the welfare of the citizens. So they're like perfect for basically the job, and their brothers who are not like that, or not as good as them, of course, are envious and jealous of them. Akrura also learned that the envious Dhrtarastra, in consultation with his ill-advised son, had tried to kill the Pandavas by poisoning them. This is also true. So there are situations where through all these deception by Duryodhana and his father Dhrtarastra, they tried to kill their cousins in many ways, or in the one case they exiled them for 12 years. And anyway, that's all part of the Mahabharata. it's a really great story. Akrura happened to be one of the cousins of Kunti. Therefore, after meeting him, she began to inquire about her paternal relatives. Thinking of her birthplace, she began to cry. She asked Akrura whether her father, mother, brothers, sisters, and other friends at home were still remembering her. She especially inquired about Krishna and Balaram, her glorious nephews. She asked, does Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is very affectionate to his devotees, remember my sons? Does Balaram remember us? Inside herself, Kunti felt like a she-deer in the midst of tigers, and actually her position was like that. After the death of her husband, King Pandu, she was supposed to take care of the 5 Pandava children, but Dhrtarastra was always planning to kill them. She was certainly living as a poor innocent animal in the midst of several tigers. Being a devotee of Lord Krishna, she was always thinking of him and expected that one day Krishna would come and save them from their dangerous position. She inquired from Akrura whether Krishna proposed to come and advise the fatherless Pandavas how to get free of the intriguing policy of Dhrtarastra and his sons. By talking with Akrura about all these affairs, she felt herself helpless and began to exclaim, my dear Krishna, you are the supreme mystic, the super soul of the universe. You are the real well-wisher of the whole universe. My dear Govinda, at this time you are far away from me, yet I pray to surrender unto your lotus feet. At the present moment, I am very much grief-stricken with my 5 fatherless sons. I can fully understand that but for your lotus feet there is no shelter or protection. Your lotus feet can deliver all aggrieved souls because you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can be safe from the clutches of repeated birth and death by your mercy only. My dear Krishna, you are the Supreme Pure One, the Super Soul, and the Master of all yogis. What can I say? I can simply offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Accept me as your fully surrendered devotee. Although Krishna was not present before her, Kunti offered her prayers to him as if she were in his presence, face to face. This is possible for anyone following in the footsteps of Kunti. So it's not to be said, there are many, many stories where actually devotees are too poor to buy certain things, paraphernalia for offering to Krishna, and they just offer in their mind. You know, the good story of Vasudeva when he was in prison, wanted to give, charity to the Brahmanas, so he did so in his mind. And it's good, because it is part of your material energy, the mind, to engage the mind. And that is the point of Krishna consciousness, is to engage the mind in the service of Krishna. Engage our senses, engage whatever we have in the service of Krishna. He is actually present everywhere by spiritual potency, and one simply has to surrender unto him sincerely. When Kunti was offering her prayers very feelingly to Krishna, she could not check herself and began to cry loudly before Akrura. Vidura was also present, and both Akrura and Vidura became very sympathetic to the mother of the Pandavas. They began to solace her by glorifying her sons, Yudhishthira, Arjuna, and Bhima. They pacified her, saying that her sons were extraordinarily powerful, should not be perturbed about them, since they were born of great demigods, Yamaraj, Indra, and Vayu. So those are 3 of the sons that were born, Yamaraj, Indra, and Vayu, and Nakula and Sahadev were born of the Ashvini twins, which were also demigods. Akrura decided to return and report on the extreme circumstances in which he found Kunti and her 5 sons. He first wanted to give good advice to Dhrtarastra, who was so favorably inclined towards his own son and unfavorably inclined toward the Pandavas. This is like, atheists are people who are acting demoniacally or demons. They can never understand or accept good advice. Even when they're given constantly good advice, they're so envious towards God that it's just bounces off of them, doesn't enter in the ears and into the heart. When Kunti and Dhrtarastra were sitting among friends and relatives, Akrura began to address him, calling him Vrachitra Virya, means the son of Vichitra-virya. Vichitra-virya was the name of the father of Dhrtarastra, but Dhrtarastra was not actually the begotten son of Vichitra-virya. This is another story. He was actually, those brothers, the Pandu, Vidura, and Dhrtarastra were all born of Vyasadeva, who was actually another son of Gandhari. Not Gandhari, but sorry, I'm trying to remember her name. I'm sorry, but it's actually the mother of Bhishma, the queen. He was the begotten son of Vyasadeva. Here it says here. Formerly, it was the system that if a man were unable to beget a child, his brother could beget a child in the womb of his wife. That system is now forbidden in this age of Kali. Akrura called Dhrtarastra Vichitra-virya sarcastically because he was not actually begotten by his father. He was the son of Vyasadeva. When a child was begotten in the wife by the husband's brother, the husband was claimed by the husband. The child was claimed by the husband, but of course the child was not begotten by the husband. This sarcastic remark pointed out that Dhrtarastra was falsely claiming the throne on hereditary grounds. Actually, the son of Pandu was the rightful king. In the presence of the Pandu sons, the Pandavas, Dhrtarastra should have not occupied the throne. So everybody kind of knew this, that actually by law, by the status, the Pandu, the son Yudhishthira should have been the emperor, and he was at one point. But then that's another story in the Mahabharata, how he was cheated out of that. Akrura then said, "My dear son of Vichitra-virya, you have unlawfully usurped the throne of the Pandavas anyway. Somehow or other you are now on the throne. Therefore I beg to advise you to please rule the kingdom on moral and ethical principles. If you do so and try to teach your subjects in that way, then your name and fame will be perpetual." Akrura hinted that although Dhrtarastra was ill-treating his nephews, the Pandavas, they happened to be his subjects. Even if you treat them not as the owners of the throne, but as your subjects, you should impartially think of their welfare as though they were your own sons. But if you do not follow this principle and act in just the opposite way, then you will be unpopular among your subjects. And in the next life, you will have to live in a hellish condition. I therefore hope you will treat your own sons and the sons of Pandu equally. Akrura hinted that if Dhrtarastra did not treat the Pandava and his sons as equals, then surely there would be a fight between the two camps of cousins, which there was with the Battle of Kurukshetra. Since the Pandavas' cause was just, they would come out victorious, and the sons of Dhrtarastra would be killed. This was a prophecy told by Akrura to Dhrtarastra. So, yeah, that this idea of the monarchy, the Vedic kingdom, the Vedic kings were, generally speaking, the system was that they were saintly kings. There were many, many saintly kings, and King Bharat. There was Ugrasena and different kings, Yudhishthira, and so there were great kings that were saintly, and the job of the Kshatriya, or the king in the time, was to be educated by the Brahmanas in spiritual matters and to make sure that your kingdom was following that policy, and that everyone in the kingdom would be benefited, with what they need materially, what they need spiritually, and what we know as monarchy nowadays, and what has actually transpired in the last couple thousand years maybe, is corrupt kingdoms, where basically it's a dictatorship, in the sense that the populace is suffering under a dictator who is a king, and there's infighting between the king and the family. So even though there was infighting here, you could tell that even this was sort of happening here. There were certain kings who were not following the Vedic rule. They were following their own selfish motives, and the impact on the kingdom would be very clear. But when Yudhishthira was emperor, everyone loved him because of his his kindness to the populace. They were loyal to Yudhisthira and the Pandava brothers. And so I think what we will do is we will continue. Let me see how long this is. I'll read one more paragraph, and then we'll just continue on next time. Akura further advised Dhrtarastra, in this material world, no one can remain as an eternal companion to another. It's a pretty straight thing, you know. Everybody's acting on this sort of existence in relationships and whatnot, thinking that, oh, I will be with this person forever. But they know deep down that that's not true, but they act on this platform anyways. We come into this world, and as my spiritual master would say, they're like sticks that come together in the river, and sometimes they're together for a while. But this is how we meet people. We come together with sticks. Sometimes we part. We never see that person again. Or sometimes we may go a long time with this person, and then we are separated. And this is the nature of this material world. By chance only we assemble together in family, in the society, in the community, or in the nation. But at the end, because every one of us has to give up the body, we must be separated. We should not, therefore, be unnecessarily affectionate towards family members. You can be affectionate towards your family members, but in lieu of relationship to Krishna, helping your family members remember Krishna, remember their identity, but not making your family members your shelter. And that's why Lord Jesus Christ, he had said that, you know, ask somebody to follow him, and the person said, well, I have to go and, you know, help with my father's funeral. You know, I have to arrange that. And Jesus Christ said, let the dead bury the dead. And what he meant was that this sort of relationship, that people who put this idea that, you know, oh, this father, this child is really my father and child. It's like, no, we are all individual living entities. We're playing a role. That's why Krishna said to Arjuna, you know, that never was there a time when any of these people on this battlefield existed. You know, sorry, never was there a time when they did not exist. So, you know, they're all out there on the battlefield playing a role as your father, your benefactor, your teacher, your children, your uncle. They're all playing that role temporarily. And in your next life, you'll come into, you know, if you're in a human body, another relationship. You may be a female. You may find yourself in a completely different relationship. You will. Or you may even, most likely, maybe not be a human in a human life, but as some other species, 8,400,000 species. So, and then it's a completely new thing. You're thinking, oh, I'm this hummingbird, and this is my wife hummingbird, and these are my children hummingbird, and I live in this nest up in here, and this is my existence. And then boom, you're out of that and into another thing. So many times we've come in and out of this world, into different life forms, birth after birth, death after death. And so he's saying, you know, you shouldn't put your shelter completely in your family members, but look at what's righteous, what's the bigger goal. Dhrtarastra's affection was also unlawful, and he does not show much intelligence. In plain words, Akura hinted to Dhrtarastra that his staunch family affection was due to his gross ignorance of fact. Although we appear to be combined together in family, society, or nation, each one of us has an individual destiny. Everyone takes birth according to individual past work, and therefore everyone has to individually enjoy or suffer the result of his own karma. So, and also in the end, we don't take our family members with us. They may even be standing around our bed, but we are taken away from this world, and we are faced with death by ourselves. And, you know, and hopefully with Krishna, if we can remember Krishna. If we don't remember Krishna, it's said that Krishna appears to the atheist as cruel death. You know, this staunch, horrifying reality that it's over. You know, and I could only imagine that must be so horrifying, because it's scary to die anyways. but to not feel like you have anywhere you're going, or maybe you're just being snuffed out. And the illusion and kind of like arrogant ignorance that oftentimes I've seen atheists take on, just like that it's like, oh well, you just die, just die and that's it. And then I'm not going to believe in the sky god and in some kind of heavenly place afterwards because I just am afraid of the dark, kind of thing. I've heard these kind of analogies from atheists that somehow they're better, or they're going to be okay with that, But people are very afraid of death, and when faced with that death, oftentimes atheists, right at the end, they're calling out to God for help. So there's so many stories of that, even in the story of Ajamila. It was, that's a whole nother story. I won't really get into that, but you can read that. I think there's a book called Second Chance. Bhaktivedanta wrote about that story in the Srimad Bhagavatam of Ajamila being faced with Yamadutes at the end of his life. So, although we appeared, let's see, everyone takes birth according to individual past work. Therefore, everyone has to individually enjoy or suffer the result of his own karma. There is no possibility of improving one's destiny by cooperate living. Sometimes it happens that one's father accumulates wealth by illegal ways and the son takes away the money, although it is hard earned by the father. It's just like a fish in the ocean who eats the material body of the large old fish. One ultimately cannot accumulate wealth illegally for the gratification of his family, society, community, or nation. That many great empires which developed in the past are no longer existing because their wealth was squandered away by the later descendants is an illustration of this principle. One who does not know the subtle law of fruitive activities and thus gives up the principles of moral and ethical principles only carries within the reactions of his sinful activities. In the end, everything you do is accounted for. His ill-gotten wealth and possessions are taken by someone else, and he goes to the darkest region of hellish life. One should not, therefore, accumulate more wealth than is allotted to him by destiny. Otherwise, he will be factually blind to his own interest. Instead of fulfilling his self-interest, he will act in just the opposite way for his own downfall. So, yeah, it's, the activities of the human being that are completely self-centered and selfish, this sort of, me, what am I going to do for myself, for my body, and for my senses, has so many ramifications that we can just see in the material world, whether they be, hatred, war, racism, environmental degradation, so many things because of our selfish desire to try to find happiness in this material world. But on a greater level, there is a karmic reaction to everything that we are doing. If we do not dovetail our living simply and dovetailing our life in the service of Krishna, then there will be karmic reactions and we will have to pay for them. So there is no getting away from living a sinful life or living a life that's unjust, And this is what Akura was trying to hit home for Dhrtarastra. So we're just going to chant more. We'll continue that story next time. Thank you very much. Haribo Nitagore, Haribo, Haribo Nitagore, Haribo, Haribo, Nitagore. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare thank you very much. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel here, and we'll see you for the next story.